Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town. I'm the mayor, Heath Sheeran, and the host of this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pumped you're here hanging out with me today in the program because I got my good friend Pat West hanging out with us today, and it is going to be a great one. This guy quickly became one of my best friends, and I love it, man. We had so much fun. I got to get into my sponsors today with you. And the first one is Smart Choice, the fastest growing agency network for a reason. Agency friendly contracts help you to remain profitable and be in the business for a long, long time. Carriers, they love working with you as well. It's it's no wonder that they've gotten over 10,000 agencies nationwide working with them and over 11 billion in written premium. Guys, go to smartchoiceagents.com and check them out. You'll be happy that you did. Also, my friends over at Canopy Connect, go to usecanopy.com/Heath and check out your one-click solution to getting those deck pages you need to quote your prospects. And it's more than that. It's driver list. It's VIN numbers. It is loss runs. It's so much. Guys, also, check out my friends over at Old School Marketing. It's OLDE schoolmarketing.com. They are taking a new school approach to an old school way of marketing with direct mail pieces that are guaranteed to get opened. And they do it on a drip method that will help you have phone calls ringing all month long and not just for the day that they drop. Ladies and gentlemen, OLDE schoolmarketing.com. Now, I'm going to get out of the way and let you check out this phenomenal conversation with my good friend, Pat West. Pat West, what's going on, brother?
Hey, Heath, how are you?
Man, I'm good. We have been trying to get this thing going for, it feels like 2 years now, but we're finally together.
100%. I literally was texting mutual friends and saying, if you talk to Heath, like, let him know that I'm trying to make sure we're in the right spot to do this because I was starting to feel like I was running around, and that was the last thing I wanted to do, man. So I'm glad we locked this in, and I'm happy to be here.
Me too, brother. Me too. So, yeah, I've followed your career, and I got interested, especially the last several years, in some of the things that you've been doing. We have mutual friends, as you mentioned. And it's been really cool to see, your career and see what you've been doing. And, we just talked about it a little bit off air of, we're the same age. So we came up in this time where we're old enough to remember like dial up, but we're not too old where we're like, we don't know anything. And so it's kind of interesting right now with AI and all these things coming in. So I can't wait to dive into those conversations. And I remember my roommate, you were talking about before we hit record, so I wanted to bring this back into conversation a minute, but I remember going to college, and my roommate in college, my freshman year, brought in his laptop, and I remember thinking how cool it was he could play a DVD on his laptop.
Right.
And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, you can watch movies on your laptop? And I remember like, oh yeah, I could just, I got a battery, I can watch a whole movie in the quad, or I could do it. I'm like, shut up, bro. Like, this is crazy. And like, I'll never forget that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I would say I'm absolutely that era where I was willing to crash my $2,000 computer that was the size of my dad's Buick so I could make a mixtape for a girl. I was, yeah, right. And burn it on disc. So yeah, I like we said, man, we had that decision. Like, we could ignore this stuff or we could dive head first into it. And so we found ourselves in insurance and probably are in the middle of all of it instead of, we probably didn't pick a side too quick.
No, we didn't. And I can remember, I was telling my kids yesterday, and then we'll get into some stories from you, but I remember I was telling my kids about probably 94, 95, somewhere they were in AOL chat rooms were a big thing for me. And like, going through high school, in that era, and because they were talking about, you don't understand, they didn't have social media. It's like, we were like the beginning stages of it. We had chat rooms.
Oh yeah.
Where we'd be talking to people, you have no clue who they were, and you could say you were a big buff football player and nobody knew whether you were or not. Or, you'd have these girls like, oh, I'm this, and like, no, they weren't. It's like same thing we're doing now. People get in, on these dating apps, they don't know what they're getting. So things haven't changed that much. And my kids are like, what? Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I would say this, at least we get a little revenge, right? So anytime we go to these like, these billion-dollar unicorn chat tools that we all have to use, we're like, that's AOL Instant Messenger. We pioneered that at least, right? So
Exactly.
maybe that's
100%.
the claim we bring in is like, hey, all this chat stuff you guys have is because we were willing to go in and do it. So
Exactly.
you and I did the heavy lifting so that everybody could have Slack and Discord.
Yep.
That's what I think the conclusion that we've come to, at least at this point.
100%.
Thanks
And
to Heath.
I can remember, yeah, and I can remember like, Mom, hang up. I'm on the internet. And
Yeah,
I'll never
right.
forget, like you
Exactly.
would get interrupted. Anyway. All right. So I would love to take a walk down memory lane and just hear, I've watched from the outside, but I'd like to have a front row seat, just hear a little bit, of your story and what brought you to this exciting new chapter in your career, that you've brought to. So hit me up.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I've told my story quite a while, right? I mean, insurance has kind of been part of my life for a long time, and I think really where I got into more, I would say the independent channel, right? I mean, those are the people you and I both know that those are the people that we depend on, that we follow,
Yep.
that we work for too, right? In a lot of ways. And so I started an agency back in, I want to say 2016, 2017. And I called it Hedge Quote, right? And conceptually, I was just trying to get back into the agency game, right? I was trying to create an agency, and I kind of ran into that whole, hey, I don't really want to join a co-op. I don't really want to join an aggregator, things like that. But I definitely am not in a position where I'm going to go and just grab 3 or 4 great carrier appointments either, right? And so for me, I actually found myself in an interesting spot where there was a couple of really cool insurtech carriers that were getting started. One was in Chicago, actually. And so I was able to actually become one of the, I guess you would call them first or so appointed agents, quote unquote. They had more of a direct focus, but they respected agents. They knew that was a channel they were going to go into. And so I said, hey, like, no obligation, want to try an agent like me that's kind of digitally focused, online focused. And I went through that process, and what I found was really, 20% of anybody I came across really made sense for those I guess startup carriers, if you want to call them that. And so I said, I got a great amount. These are good people. They need help. I can't say, sorry, I'm not going to help you. And so I literally just started networking with independent agencies, and I met a handful of people during that process. Right. And I met Seth from Be Atomic. Clint, Sid sat me down and said, hey, this is kind of what we're doing and what we're building into the IA channel. And I said, oh my God, like, this, what I tried at Hedge Quote, where I'm at Hedge Quote, it's going to take me forever to
Yeah.
do what you guys want to do. And so teamed up with that group, spent 3.5 awesome years with Be Atomic, working on everything from, again, connectivity APIs all the way through, just day in, day out, talking to insurance agents. Created a really cool product on that I thought a cool product, the shopping alerts product that's still available, where actually you can monitor customers in market activity, right? So Heath goes to a major carrier's website and puts in some information, looks for a quote in the middle of the night, but I'm your IA, I'm your agent. I find that out in the morning because of this. I give you a call, I clear up any misunderstandings or issues you've got, and we kind of move forward. Um, did all sorts of really awesome stuff there, and definitely consider that, a highlight, one of the big highlights of my career. And then obviously with GloveBox, again, I think you and I talked about that earlier, that there's these insurtech that people think Google's probably still a startup, right? Because of just the positioning, right? Like, oh, you can wear a t-shirt and like they have a cafeteria there that's got like kombucha in it. Like, oh, they're like a startup. And you're like, yeah, there's a little more that goes into that. But I think there's insurtech like Glovebox that have been out there for years now and have really developed out of necessity, right? A founder with a problem. But they've matured, they've developed their product, and how I came across Glovebox was years ago, knowing of them. But when I joined with them, the goal was to really lead up and put a charge into the book of business tool that they just launched with Acuity and Majesco, where we can get documents directly from carriers directly to customers, right? And so believe it or not, that's about 30% of the stuff that agents do on a daily basis, pay for, and really overspend on. So, my journey, I tell people that's, progressive, some of the progressively, that's like how it went, right? I had Hedge Quote, I went into Be Atomic, and I went into GloveBox. But, I've been individually focused on the fourth industrial revolution, right? Like Mark Benioff talks about, where it's all about connectivity and it's all based on data. So whether it was through Hedge Quote, Be Atomic, and now GloveBox, I'm still focused on that really API connectivity. And how do I make those decisions? I look at a lot of really unique data that I still don't think a lot of people know is out there.
Dude, I love that. And I think you could tell you told that story a lot. So I wrote down some notes here because I want to make sure I highlight a few things. First of all, working backwards, actually going backwards, forwards, you can't not say, 3 awesome years and get excited about when you get set down by Seth and Sid and Clint. I mean, like,
Oh my
Seth's
God.
one of the most dynamic people I've ever met in my life. Like, you can't not, like, that had to have been an experience. I know him well enough to know that that's Seth. Like, that's genuinely Seth.
So I'll tell a quick story on this. So my dad and my brother, actually, they're on the boat today, right? God love them. So Southern Wisconsin, Lake Geneva. My dad, retired high school principal, man. We try to make sure that that's his retirement years, get him out on the boat in the sun, enjoying himself, the few months in Wisconsin where it's nice, right? But I can vividly actually remember, even before I had started Hedge Quote and right about the same time, I remember saying to my dad, I'm like, especially again, high school principal, retired, right? Midwest guy. I said, I don't know, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm talking to people on Twitter and I think I'm making connections with the right people, the people I need to get into the industry at the level that I want to be at. And he kind of looked at me and in fairness was like, okay, like you're a grown ass man, do your thing. Right. I mean, of course that, but at the same time, I remember even internally being like, saying this out loud to my father sounds a little bit crazy, but I had that conviction. Like I knew I was doing something the right way. And the first thing I met up with, I think we both know Brett Fulmer, broker Brett.
Oh yeah, my boy.
That first moment where I had somebody that reached out and I'm like, hey, I'm in SoCal. He's like, so am I. Let's have coffee. He was that first guy that said, hey, have you met this guy, Nick Lamparelli, right? And it kind of got me going into the networking side of things. And, Billy Vanger, one of those guys that just always was there, the Coverager people, all of these relationships kind of started evolving. And then one day I looked down at my phone and it was a DM from Seth on Twitter. And it said something like, hey man, I'm doing this, this, and this. Should we chat? And I said, yeah, let's chat when you come into town.
Yeah.
COVID, all this other stuff happened. Long story short, we had an awesome conversation. I said, this is what Hedge Quote's doing right now. He's like, cool. Do you want to do that for all of the agencies we have now? And I said, great. Introduced me to Sid and Clint. And I'm like, all right, well, Sid's one of the most dynamic people you'll ever meet in the industry. And then Clint, and this is no speak, Clint's one of the smartest people you will ever
Yeah.
meet in the
He's been on the
industry.
show too. Yeah.
And he's paid his dues, right? How often do you say that guy is incredibly intelligent? I can't believe the industry's lucky enough to have him. And he's like, oh, I'll do you one better. I understand how the captive agencies are doing it. I understand how the IA channel works. I know VC, and I've also connected everything you can think of. The whole thing we always said was like, once you see that data over there, you can't unsee it. And so again, I not to gloss over those 3.5 years, but to make sure that it was like, those were awesome moments. Like there was a game plan that was in place. There was people that worked really hard and pushed the ball down the field as much as they could. But yeah, to be with Seth, like I said, that was that kind of full circle moment where I went to my dad and it wasn't a, hey, I told you so. It was a,
Yeah.
hey, it worked out. And to have, you only have a few moments in your life, really, at least I have with my dad, where I could say, hey, it actually worked out. And he was like, yeah, that's awesome. So I'll always have that memory above and beyond all the other great things that happened. How often do you have that, as a grown ass man, like I said, with your father, that was created by the relationships that I had online, the people that I met and came across. And
Yep.
again, certainly that's how things got started with GloveBox as well. My
Yeah.
comfort level with approaching those guys. with everything that they've done and all the things they've been involved in, the things they've spearheaded and supported, to have even the confidence to reach out to them and say, please let me know what you're doing, because I think I could come in and be a starter, right? I feel like I come and be on the A team for you guys. And once you got there, I realized, wow, there's about 35 A-list professional people that are just crushing it. So it's all of those things are combined. It's the community, right? It's that InsurTech community that molded with the independent agency channel that, God love them. People like you, Sid, people that are still spreading the message, people like Aubie with Weston 101, like those things are the evolution, the maturation of a lot of people that just really gave a damn about other people in the industry.
Yeah.
And then the handful of people that showed up with the data and said, like, hey, Kerry Wallace, right? Like, hey, here's the stuff we need to be focused on. So I could name drop all day long, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's how I looked at it. But dude, it's in that evolution, that conversation, that all stems from I look down at my phone every day and I'm like, did he share and really just ask me to be on his podcast, right? Am I talking?
Yeah.
Like, is Bradley really texting me with feedback on my tweets, and is Scott asking me, what I think about this? Those moments in time, I still have to take steps back and say, like, wow, that. And the time, it seemed crazy, dude. I mean, it really did. It just seemed like you said, man, we could have gone either way. Like the social media
Yeah.
technology, we could have gone the other way where we put a suit and tie on, buried our heads, and not that either are right or wrong, but I felt like it was that validation only comes from our community, people like you.
Listen, and I appreciate you saying that, but yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think through that, and I get to the opportunity to still coach some agencies and consult with some agencies as well. That I'm still excited because I want to keep my finger on the pulse there. And I come
Right.
at it from this standpoint, which I think is fascinating. Of I had this old school in me because my father, who's 80 years old, on the other side of this wall, I moved him in here. You know, he taught me the old school ways of knocking doors and ringing,
Mhm.
telephones. And, again, before Google was around, but that resonates today, which is crazy to me that people want all this technology so they can get out and knock doors or be able to spend time on the phone with their clients and build those relationships. And I'm like, I took that for granted when I was in 2001, 2, 3, 4, whatever that was. As a kid, I took that for granted. And
Mhm.
I look back, I can't change anything. I've loved my career, but it's like, is that like that? This is strange to me. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%. And I think that I like what you said about how we use those things to get out, right? And we meet the people we want. My dad has to use an app on his iPhone to launch his boat, but it took him
Yeah.
1 second to do it, and he loves
Yep.
it. I mean, literally wakes up in the morning and he doesn't care. Oh, I don't have to call the marina and bother the college person that's running the dock for the summer. Like he likes that too. And yeah, I mean, I really think that connection piece of it was important. It's hard though, right? It's hard to go out there. For me, it was especially because I literally had the Al Granum book and shoebox when I started my insurance career. And like
Yep.
good or bad, I'm not going there with it, but like it was, if you're failing, it's because of that shoebox. And if you're succeeding, it's because of that shoebox. And
Yep.
I'm sitting there going, man, I mean, the market dynamics tell me that where I'm at in the south suburbs of Chicago has a very small population of people that can buy it. So I need to be in Chicago all the time. Hey, is it cool if I don't go to these, weekly stand-up meetings? No, it's not, right? And so I think that's the big evolution I've seen in my career, whether it was, going from Northwestern Mutual, into more of the gaming side of life for a while, building software for nonprofits, and then right back into State Farm. I was at State Farm when they went on Salesforce. I went through that process, kind of frontline,
Yeah.
remembering when it wouldn't work and you would still have to call and do the paper really
Yeah.
quick so it didn't look like you messed up. Going through that whole process, man, I tell you what, it's definitely been a good seat to be in. Maybe that's where I'm getting with it, is like as older, like geriatric millennials, I guess is what they would call us, right? Like
Yeah.
being in that, it's sometimes they make fun of it, right? But it's like, you know what? I just got back from a beach volleyball or from a volleyball tournament in Florida where every dude that was there had the Eminem bleach blonde hair. They were rocking Nirvana t-shirts, dude, like baggy Jinko looking pants. I think it's like, hey, we're kind of in our moment now where that joke I made earlier about, burning a CD, it was like, we're that generation that'll piece things together if we have to.
Yeah.
So don't underestimate us. Maybe that's not a direct point or anything like that, but
No, but I
I'm with
completely
you, man.
agree. You know, we grew up, at least where I'm from Arkansas and in the South. I've always lived in the South. But me growing up in the 90s, and, I say I'm a 90s kid, but I'm really an 80s kid born in the 80s. But either way, like we grew up looking back at the 70s.
Hmm.
That was kind of our thing. Like people wore the bell bottoms and like we had the same kind of music with Jimi Hendrix, and all that grunge and the, Nirvana and all that. We grew up idolizing the 70s. I feel like this generation now is kind of looking at our generation and like, oh, they did some cool stuff. And like they're starting to dress in the 80s style now. And, like you said, the Jinkos and the 90s styles coming in. It's like, it's interesting to be in that. First, it makes me feel old as hell. But second of all, it's kind of cool though, because my kids are wearing things that I would have worn, when I was a kid. And like it was my son, I think, came home with a friend, him and his buddies came in, and they had like one of them necklaces on. We used to like the hemp necklaces. And I was like, bro, I brought those in style in the 90s. Like, come on. And he's like, oh, these are so dope, dude. I'm like, no. Anyway, it's just funny to me how that works. But anyhow, I got to I can't go too far down nostalgia with you because then we won't have a good podcast. I feel like I'm going to go off on that. But no, I did want to bring up, I think it's interesting that you made a good, a funny statement to me that I don't know if you thought about this, but like you said, Google makes it feel like we feel like it's still a startup, right? Because it's the
Yeah.
things you talked about. But GloveBox, on the other hand, it feels like they've been around forever, and they've only been around. I mean, they've been around what 3 or 4 years, which in startup world is a long, long time because they've made it past that stage. But
That
it
hump,
just
right?
feels like, yeah. But it feels like, and I was thinking back, I was like, I think I was in their headquarters in 2021, maybe 2022. And so I'm thinking back, I'm like, man, that was a long time ago, but really it's not, and so
No.
it's funny how that dynamic of like, we feel like Google's still new, because of that, but, it feels like, I don't know what that says about either one of them. I think it's I say that with because I love Ryan and Andy to death and Sean. So I say that, as a positive thing to say, like they've made it over that hump. They've established themselves and they've busted their ass all along the way. I don't say that as a negative by any means, but I do find that interesting. Those
Yeah.
two that you brought up.
And I think that's, again, that was probably more in the context of like, as an industry, how quickly things have evolved, right? And I think that we can even go back to not to be nostalgic about the jeans and the music and the stuff that was out there, right? At the end of the day, but you said it felt like yesterday, right?
Yeah,
And when I started my career, I had a shoebox with cards in it, right?
yeah,
And at this point, like literally, I am in charge of the only company that's going directly to carriers and saying, like, let's bring all of that shoebox and put it into one spot, right? Like
yeah,
to go from that and to feel like, wow, if I were to retire today, I would never be able to make it through retirement. That's how early I feel in my career to have that much of a dynamic shift that it goes from shoebox right directly into like, hey, we just need to all be directly connected, right? Fourth industrial revolution. That
yeah,
speed, I think, is the thing that our generation has always had to deal with, right? I mean, I went to college, literally my first semester of college was I walked out of a freshman philosophy course to 9/11, right? I married and found out I was having kids and bought a condo type thing in the '08 environment, right? That was there.
yeah,
So all of these things that we've gone through, right? None of us know a world without war type of a thing. All our buddies went that type of lifestyle. I feel like that pace doesn't seem that different to us, right? But maybe to the industry, to the other people that are out there, it isn't that adaptability isn't quite built into everybody. But I would say that there is that piece is good, but it's time for that to kind of taper off, right? Like that whole idea of hey, I can figure this out, I can piece it together. 5 years ago, I would say that, but now it's, and GloveBox is the perfect example. That premium product, right? That established brand in the market, founders that understand your problem, right? Teams 30 deep. That is for all of the ideas that didn't quite make it. The end result of the insurtechs for agencies came out pretty well. There was some good acquisitions, some founders made some good money, but the reality is that there are premium products in the marketplace now that, yeah, man, at the end of the day, Jinkos might look the same, but they're not made out of the same material, man. Like
No.
those things weighed 30 pounds when we used to buy them. It's not the same material.
Yep.
These premium products that are in the insurtech marketplace are, we make the statement that it's like the difference between 8 cents and $20, right? Like that adaptability, all that good stuff, right? Like throw that out of the window now. You are in an environment where you're competing with premium products, data-driven agency owners, private equity companies that are buying your competitors. And if you don't want to sell to them, guess what? You're now a competitor of $1 billion fund. Like this just isn't that same Main Street concept, that small business concept that's out there. And again, and everything else that's cyclical, our industry has moved a massive amount in 5 years. And again, people like the GloveBox folks that have built out what they've built out, that's the stuff that is
Yeah.
actually they don't tell a lot of the success stories. It's easy to say I was right and that wasn't going to work. There's a handful of them that are really special right now, and I'm lucky to be on one of those teams.
Yeah, bro. I couldn't, you said that very well. And what I find fascinating the whole time you're talking through that, and I'm really trying to dial in and pay attention to what you're saying, because you're saying things that's triggering all this shit in my mind. I'm like, I gotta stay. Anyhow, you would think after 5 years of podcasting, I'd learn how to do that better, but I just get so excited still about things. But and even as I'm talking right now, I'm forgetting shit I want to say, but that's okay. So what I find fascinating in what you're talking about with the technology and whatnot. My first question, I guess, before I forget it, because I was gonna try to come back to it later, but my brain doesn't work that way. So as I consult with agencies, on the sales side, and then as I'm working at Vertifor, and I've got both these worlds, um, there's still a lot of I wouldn't call it fear, but a lot of hesitation in agencies now, Main Street agencies you talk about, because the question comes up to me sometimes of like, how far is too far? How far? I mean, how connected do we really need to be? And so on the one hand, I'm preaching, over here of like, yeah, this connectivity is making us better so we can build these relationships. And this connectivity is helping you. And again, going back to what I think Sid says all the time, I know she says, but I don't know if she coined it or not, but like those who don't adopt it are going to get passed up by those that do, and so it's not like you have to, but if you don't, you may get lapped by somebody who does get into AI or technology or GloveBox or whatever it might be Atomic and the things y'all were doing there. And so, on the one hand, I'm talking out of that side of my mouth, wearing my orange. But on the other side, I'm like, no, I mean, there's still a lot of agencies that are old school, pick up the phone, calling or knocking on doors. And there's still people that are, doing just fine with a file cabinet and an AMS, and that's it. So it's interesting to me to see. But I wanted to ask you, coming from your background, and you and I in the same boat there, of like, how connected, and I'm interested to hear what you think, because I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm probably wrong. How far do we go on this? How connected do we have to be, or do we need to be, or will we be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the question right now. And what I would say, and I've said this on social quite a bit, right? Is, if you were to give me a great insurance agency with a positive attitude, I could take all of the things that people are excited about with Lemonade, and I could build those into that agency in about 3 weeks. And I could probably do that for somewhere in the range of, now I'm not going to throw a number, but it wouldn't be six figures, right? It
It'd be
definitely
affordable.
wouldn't be $500 million. I assure
Right.
you of that. If I were to get hired by that other company and they were to bring me in and they were to say, hey, we want you to recreate all of the things that Heath, all of the things that our friends in the agency channel have. I want you to create that for us. I would say, awesome. I'm going to need $25 million to do that. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not
Yeah.
exaggerating. I have thought this through. That is the conversation that I look at it and say is that what is your competitor right now, right? I mean, certainly a little bit of the captive, like, hey, they might go to a State Farm across the street versus me as an independent agent. Maybe there's another independent agent in the area that I kind of go head to head with. But really, what no one talks about are these digital online first, if you want to call them, agencies, for lack of a better term, that are getting $10 million from venture capital firms, right? And so they're going to operate in that mix, right? They're going to mix. They're certainly more direct heavy. So that's why they're raising a lot more capital. But my whole thing was, to your question, what is too much? I would say there's a line that goes right up to about where these direct providers go, right? Where it's that service center concept, right? That ability to self-service. The speed to quote and bind is not as important. And here's the reason, because, and I'm not going to say the name, right? But we all know that the reason it's so fast and easy is because it's an underpriced renter's policy. It's
Yeah.
really not underwriting a whole lot of anything except the crap you got laying around in your
Yeah.
house. Show me a boat dock, show me a 3-car garage that's at a weird angle in an unincorporated part of town. That's where we start talking about actual insurance professionals, quote to bind speed. That's where most people are interested, right? So
Yeah.
if I'm looking at it and I'm saying, what's too much, right? Like, you want to push hard right now. It's GloveBox is the one group with Acuity and Majesco. We're doing that, but you got to push hard at the carrier level to say, like, I need direct connections to my documents, right? 96% of carriers don't download documents. So what ends up happening is,
That's a
I'm
good
an
number.
insurance
I didn't know that
agency.
number.
I got to go and grab that crap, manually
Yep.
grab that crap and put it in. And Heath, what does that do, right? Oh my gosh, InsurTech, all these great InsurTech ideas that just couldn't get the traction they wanted. Well, why? And Ryan, Sean, those guys I give them 1,000,000% credit, because I've been on this path a long time and I missed it. But why
Yeah.
does all of this stuff fail? Oh, cool. I'm so excited to get my online quote and bind, but I got to go grab my deck page out of my safety deposit box and I got to manually input it into that, right? Like, that's why all of this stuff, it gets like that's not a digital experience. I'm just going to call. We get lost in this, and to their credit, because they've known it, they set out to do it. They saw that element missing. So now what do they get? They get that space, right? But then we get to build all the other things we know we want because we have that base, right? It all comes back to, like, hey, why? Oh, it seems manual no matter how digital I try to make it. It's because of that download issue, not having access to those documents. In a simple API connection with a carrier, with a Majesco, makes it even easier. That stuff all of a sudden opens up floodgates, and it's all the people that argue with the Lemonade fanboys on Twitter about stock price. All they're trying to say is, hey, if you were in the industry, you would know that there's just that little piece that holds up everything else.
Yeah.
GloveBox, that we're the group that's unlocked that. The carrier partners were doing it. Now we have that digital experience. And what I would say is, back to how far is too far. That's what we have to do as agents to get documents. If a direct player wants to grab what your policyholder has and get them a quote, you know what they need? They need a cell phone number, Heath. That's it. They pay so much money for so locked in, so much data. They don't care, 200, $300 in data, whatever. They'll just brag about how much data that they get that everybody doesn't. But that's what you're fighting, right? And so you got to stand up, and at one point you got to say, hey, look, I am not going to allow them to get access to all of this stuff with my policyholder's cell phone number, because they're willing to outspend me, when, dang it, I know I got a solution. I know there's people that used to be agents that understand technology that I can trust that are doing it. How much is too much is so good of a question. And I would say it is absolutely up to that line of what's available in the market. against where your D2C, direct to consumer competitors are really pushing, because PE's coming in and buying agencies. They're really not investing in them. VC is interested in
Yeah.
those fast moving digital agencies, man. And like, let's face it, you and I both know if you gave us 10 million bucks and said, hey, go make a kick-ass insurance agency, like we'd go make a kick-ass insurance agency. So like, I'm not a sell on fear, buy on fear guy, but I would say like the roadmap is obvious. It's laid out.
Right.
Lemonade will literally spend another $1 billion this year telling us what we're doing wrong. They're fanboys that love all the stock pricing arguments and everything else. They'll tell you all the places that you're missing. I mean, dude, that is free roadmap. That is free advice.
100%.
And there's a handful of people that can really solve those issues, right?
Yeah. And yeah, you got my brain rolling on some things. And so I wonder again, how far is too far in my brain? And I talked to a lot of different people on this show. And I had a guy that called me the other day, and I get the fun thing about having a podcast. You pull back the curtain for those that don't own a podcast or, been a part of a podcast. You get lots of people that reach out to you that want to be on your show. And there's people that, they hire companies to reach out to you. So I had this conversation with this guy, and he was talking about, he's got this, I forgot what he called it, but basically it was no human agency. And so he was like, because of the connectivity and the APIs, he could have someone call in and talk to a generative AI bot, similar to a company we won't name, just because I don't want to throw any names out there, but you've heard of him. It's a big splash in the industry. And, they would use technology like similar to one of my biggest sponsors and good friends in Canopy Connect, and getting all the documents they need, and I know like GloveBox, y'all could do that kind of stuff too. And, and then, from there it goes into a Raider, and then from there it goes into the main system. Then from there it gets this, and all in a matter, he got through telling me all this. He was like, yeah, in a matter of 48 seconds, I can have somebody done out the door, because of all this connectivity. And I'm like, on the one hand, I'm like, that sounds scary as shit. But on the other hand, I'm like, that could be the world that we live in, of like, there's agencies that are ghostly. Like there's nobody in there, ghost agencies, so to speak. And then I think about, and again, I'm not saying good or bad or indifferent. For me, again, going back to the era we grew up in, it kind of freaks me out a little bit. The other part of that, I think, could there be a day when I wake up, roll over and say, hey, Alexa, I need to buy car insurance. Can you buy me this? I need these limits, or whatever, or compare my old one and buy a new one, whatever, and then come back and say, would you like to buy? And I'd say, yes. I mean, is that a day we're going to get to? I don't know. It's just, or do we put on goggles and we're walking in the metaverse and we walk into an agency and buy virtually? I don't know. I don't know. That's just my thoughts, and I just wanted to ramble for a minute to see what you think.
No, I mean, I think that it's good to live in that mindset as a business owner. I mean, don't let it be unhealthy, certainly. I mean, don't let it paralyze you. I mean, again, you're smart enough to be where you are now. You're going to be smart enough to adapt. I mean, the agent, there's so many things that have been promised on that front that could take you in that direction. I think it's adoption. I mean,
Yeah.
I talk to every once in a while, I give him some grief about it, but I talk to Matteo Carboni on Twitter, LinkedIn. I go back and forth, and he's big in IoT. And I always told him, he's like, well, then tell me what you think the future of an agency looks like. And I'm like, I think it looks like a Verizon store, honestly. Like, I think that if you're going to launch IoT devices, I'm going to have those in my agency. I'm going to have people that come in and look at them, that look through those, right? There's still that physical, I need to see it. I need it mailed, right? Like I need that advice on it. And so that stuff all gets embedded back at the agency if you want the highest return, if you want the fastest distribution cycle. And so, yeah, I mean, will there be spots that will get replaced because they can be done more efficient by automation or by AI? Yes, they will. But guess what? There's not a ton of brand new insurance people coming into the industry either. So does the day wake up when the job you're doing today is done by something else? Potentially. But all that should mean is that, again, you and I are listening to Spotify and sending each other playlist links instead of putting the mix CD that I burned off of Napster into the mail and you get it in 3 days. Like you and I are going to learn, we're going to use different tools. But I think insurance professionals, not that you're safe from anything, you should challenge yourself to understand AI better, to understand API, to understand technology, to upskill yourself. I intentionally think my wife is one of the most inspiring people you'll ever meet. And she just got done with her MBA from the University of Illinois. So raising 2 kids, twin boys through
Yeah,
seventh, eighth grade, and now going into freshman year is enough. She got an MBA through that.
that's
Watching
amazing.
her do that inspired me to upskill myself, right? And getting certified at MuleSoft, getting certified through Salesforce, getting AI certifications, understanding all of those things. Those are things that have nothing to exactly specifically do with insurance that have
Yeah.
made me better at being an insurance consultant, being an insurance salesman, just an insurance quote unquote personality.
Yeah.
Upskill yourself. So the day exists where you can stop working on yourself and building yourself as a professional in the insurance space. And like any job, you could watch yourself become irrelevant. But no, there's nothing that is going to change the dynamics of that person that is willing to deal with you on a really shit day in your life. Excuse my language, but a bad day in
No,
your life.
you're right. And
That
that's the
person,
thing. Yeah.
that's the insurance industry, man.
No, you're exactly right. And so for those who've listened, this show long enough, I say it every week, I think, and it's okay. I'm not going to apologize. It's who I am. I'm a relationship guy, always will be. And so I don't want anybody listening to this to think, oh no, the mayor's jumped off the deep end. He doesn't believe in relationships anymore. It's not what I'm saying.
No,
And
yeah.
I will always believe in that. But I also think that, to your point, I can remember back again in my early days of selling, I was so threatened by people being able to go 15% or more or 15% or less in 15% or 15 minutes or less or whatever it was. And, but people that would go to Progressive online and I was threatened by that, but I would get the phone calls and my agency would get the phone calls. Say, hey, I need you to service my account. I need to file a claim, I do whatever. I have Progressive. And I'll be like, okay. And I'd look at, like, they're not in our system. And I bought it online, but they're still coming to me for claims. They're
Yep.
still calling my service team to do this or that, or even the Geico people or the whoever people or the, DTC carriers, they would still call us. So I still feel like, I don't care if we're looking 20 years from now, I still feel like they're going to want to have somebody hold their hand because people are innately not lazy, but they're going to want someone to hold their hand and help them out because that's that feeling of comfort. It's that feeling of somebody cares. And I don't think you can get that from AI.
Well, and I think we are in a spot now where I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I would challenge this, right? And I would say that we live in a world where, great, Heath, you tell me we have a good relationship and I like you. I mean, I like
Yeah.
talking to you, but you make me call the agency to get ID cards. And guess what,
Yeah.
man? I drive overnight to Florida. Excuse me, time to go. I am that level Midwestern dude. I will get in the car and drive to Florida overnight because why wouldn't you? It makes total sense to my Midwestern brain, right? I am that guy.
Yeah.
I cool. Like we hang out at Little League. We tell, we watch the local game, whatever we do together that's relationship that I like you because of gets thrown out the door at 7:45 on a Thursday when I'm about to drive 1,200 miles to Orlando for the week. And I
Yeah.
can't find my damn ID cards. Cause I tell you what, man,
Dude. So
I,
right.
I I ran the gauntlet. It felt like a Mad Max episode. I went through the state of Georgia. Salute to the state troopers in the state of Georgia. They were at a damn near every mile marker from north to south. If you wanted to get anywhere near Orlando, you had to basically drive past every trooper in the state of Georgia.
That's funny.
I made it through there, but dude, I mean, if I didn't have my ID cards, I mean, I would be puckered. Let's just leave it there, man. I would not be in a comfortable mood. There are no amount of barbecues. There are no amount of little league sponsorships. There are no amount of, hey man, I know why your house doesn't get underwritten by these 3 carriers that comes into play when I'm sitting in that environment. And so I genuinely think we are at a moment in time where technology actually becomes a part of your relationship. It becomes
Or your
part of
value prop.
your
Yeah.
personality because If you don't have, you're always going to be my favorite. Get everything. And that's what I said back. How much is too much? Just get what they all have. We're not talking about $500 million. Let's be baseline. Let's keep growing, because to your point, if you take all these other things that are known knowns, that are solvable problems, and you keep Heath at the top, we are freaking winning, dude. We are winning all day. And I try to tell agencies that. I try to talk to carriers in my new role about that every day, is just, if you want to show people you care, you can't hide anymore. The data is there. The experienced people that can solve the problem, that you can trust, that have
Yeah.
millions of policyholders, hundreds of agencies. That's the evolution that has happened here. And I mean, don't ever stop asking the how much is too much question. But at the same stretch, like, let's challenge people when they say that, to say, cool, what's your checklist, right? Like, we
Yeah.
can go through those types of things, and like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to say what's expensive. I'm not going to look at your budget and be judgmental, but I'm going to be damn honest to you about what that bill looks like. Because, man, again, no one should be making a decision like, oh, I'm buying that. Why? Well, because I feel like I need it. No, like, I'm going to get 3x return on this, or I'm going to carve 20% of what I do on a daily basis out, and I'm going to put those
Yeah.
people on more important tasks. That's the conversations that are happening right now. And if you're not, like, I'm not talking trash here, like, start having them. I mean, it's not, there's nothing wrong with you, but it's today, right? Plant a tree today, man. Plant that
Yeah.
tree.
Yeah, I agree. And I can remember, and again, I told you before we hit record, and we got to wrap up shortly, but I got to get this couple of these things out that I want to ask you is, so I remember we talked about Bradley earlier, so we'll name drop him again. Several years ago, talking about direct API integrations in his agency, and I'd never heard of that before, and I really thought, and I didn't realize how EA he was on that. I didn't realize that, because I really thought, oh, by now everyone will be having these conversations with their carriers and with these people, and he was super early, because that hasn't, and unless you're seeing something I'm not, I haven't seen a whole lot of that. And I feel like that's the world, going back to what we've been talking about the whole time, that we will get to, there's going to be a lot more of that, but I just thought it'd be a lot quicker than it has been.
I think yeah, I think that's a fair statement. And I think what ends up happening is that, no one was, there wasn't a spot to do it at scale. And so that's what and that's the
Yeah.
challenge with the IA channel, regardless of what we're talking about. That scale moment has come, right? I mean, GloveBox has 2.5 million policyholders plus. It's got 700 agencies that use the platform. If I'm an insurance carrier, that distribution alone, that investment's it's a no-brainer. I can literally I can name the names of the agencies impacted. I can tell you exactly what 30% of everything they do is going towards. You give us that document, that ability to get documents, we are changing the entire conversation about operations at an agency's level. We're talking about a hell of a lot fewer people calling a carrier too. I mean, and like back what we said, our industry is still solving an issue with getting motivated, excited people, talented people to join our ranks. I mean, we are doing a lot more with a lot less, and we're getting fewer and fewer people that are willing to kind of come along for that journey. So again, I believe we are finally in that moment in time where, again, like you said, these matured startups, these folks that maybe the first time you heard about them, they were agents like you, but they've made it that decision. The ability to do that API at scale, right? To get documents in place, then to go in and say, what's the next big thing that's huge out there, right? Like, all of a sudden in the next 18 months, with the right people making the right decisions, we're going to solve three of the biggest issues, the biggest cost sucks in an agency. And that's just the dollars and cents conversation. We're not even talking about the reality of, like, it freaking sucks to call somebody to get something that you can get yourself. It doesn't make you happier. And if they pivot to a life insurance conversation when you just need to get to Orlando for a volleyball tournament, you're gonna lose that relationship. And so, yeah, man, like, that scale conversation is everything right now. GloveBox is in that moment in time. and we're the premier product on what we do on the customer experience platform level, we have that capability. I came into the team, right? I followed along with all of the progress that the development
Yeah.
team is. These guys are so cool. They're so committed to the industry that the
Yeah.
one thing that they always do is like they forget to mention there are 35 badass people working over here. I mean, uber talented. Like
Oh yeah.
I sit in these conversations and I'm like taking notes and I'm like, I can't keep up because everything they're saying is either so insightful or I have to go research it. And like, damn, man, like after everything we've been through, like man to man, just one honest sense, like, doesn't that make you feel a little bit good knowing that dudes that
Yeah.
were agents that love the industry have a freaking like Silicon Valley level type team building for carriers and agents in the IA channel? Like when I
Unreal.
came across that, I said, I want to put a little bit of what I want. That's what I want to put my energy into. Like everywhere I've gone, I've had a game plan. I've executed on it. It was literally perfect timing.
Yeah.
But dude, I could not be more happy about exactly where and what I'm working on. But that's because of the
Oh,
people that
100%.
did what they did.
Yeah. And
That's
yeah,
the thing, man.
it's crazy. So my wife runs the PA of Arkansas. We hired Ryan and Andy and Sean to come in and do a speaking gig for us several years ago in Memphis, Tennessee. I'll never forget. We're at Graceland, Elvis's house, and they're up on stage, talking about their agency, not about GloveBox, but they were, and the people in the audience were at the edge of their seats listening to how they built this mortgage referral program they had and how they grew from, I think it was, 5 million to 50 million or 100 million, whatever that number was. I can't remember their big, like,
It was
oh my God.
basically that. It was pretty much
Yeah.
that.
5
Five to
million to
100.
100 million, I think is what it was. And
It was insane.
but like to your point, these are guys that did it. They've proven the concept of, they know how to sell. And now you take these, as you would say, like I just, my wife and I talk about it, like my wife makes fun of me a lot because I have this like man crush on all, like everyone that works, including you now, that works at GloveBox because they're just such cool people and have this charisma and this stuff. But at the end of the day, they're big old dorks that love the insurance industry and want to help. But I don't know, it's just this crazy thing. And I love you, Ryan. I love you, Andy. I know, you guys listen. And so it means a lot to me that what you
Sean,
guys
I
are
mean,
doing.
Sean,
Sean is
Sean
unreal.
is a genius. Like
Oh my
he'll
God.
never, he's probably mad I even said it out. Sean is the dude that like you sit down with him and it's exactly what you said. You're like, my brain's spinning too hard. I need 15 more of these with him. I mean, the talent is crazy,
It is
right?
crazy. Yeah. Sean, when I first met Sean, I thought, who's this guy with the crazy hair? He looks like a mad scientist, but it's really what he is. He's so smart. But yeah, I would buy anything in the world he's selling at the same time. I just think, to your point, the people are just phenomenal and what they're doing is great. So before I'm going to make an awkward transition into what I want to get into with you on this for a minute. But, one of the cool things I think as we talk through agencies and some of the agencies that are trying to navigate through, how do we, get through this? How do we make this work in an agency where we're not replaced? I think one of the coolest things that GloveBox decided to do early on, and the first time I heard this, like that is the most brilliant thing ever, is that they ended up white labeling it instead of making it all about GloveBox. And so I say this because I'm going to transition to you talking about GloveBox. But if you're an agency listening and like, how do I do this? Instead of being afraid of embedding insurance or whatever, find a way to do it in your agency with your name on it. Instead of being afraid of all these things you're talking about and connectivity and this, that, and the other, get with GloveBox and white label it. Just put your name on it anywhere you can and make it happen. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Otherwise, as Sid would say, you may get passed by someone else who does. So
Yeah,
I say all that as an awkward transition to say, tell me a little bit more. First of all, I would love your comment on the white label side of it. And then from there, just kind of transition a little bit about what's going on at GloveBox. What's the next? Because Ryan told me a couple weeks ago on the show, and the guys that are listening, they're regular listeners and gals, I should say. He alluded to there's some big things coming down the pipe. And so, and I'm sure 3 or 4 weeks later, you're already, on the other side of some of that stuff. But anyhow, Just kind of run from there. Bad transition, weird question, but hit me.
Oh, not at all. Actually, I would say that two things about the white label. The first thing I would say is like look deeper into that and understand that like, hey, when you make buying decisions, like there's something cool. You know the founder, right? So it's not that is a decision that somebody from the channel that loves the people they work for would make, right? So I would say at a philosophical level, don't forget that element, right? Because that's an easy decision that you could go the other way with it and probably have a little bit different conversation on some of the metrics that other people might. Philosophically, that's huge. I would say the second piece of it is, yeah, that branding piece is undeniable. People don't know the carrier they have anyway. They know your agency brand. That's who their insurance company is. And so if you were to dispel that or you were to break that up, you're crazy. Like you literally should just stop spending money on everything else, marketing and branding when you do that. The other point I would go to, and this is more for the carrier side of things, is that if you go to a website for an agency that doesn't have GloveBox,
Yeah.
they have to do self-service somehow. They have to give some illusion of it. They literally can't
Yep.
afford for you to call them. It's too expensive. So what do? They have a drop-down menu of claim, ID, whatever you need, right? Like the 4 or 5 things that you need. And then they're like, and select your carrier, and they give you the freaking phone number for the insurance carrier because they have to. They literally can't afford to do that at the agency level. So now carriers are also in a spot where they don't need to hire any extra service folks. It's hard to train, it's hard to keep, all that type of stuff. So, like the end result of that white labeling, all of that effort, it actually ends up being certainly just a better look for the agency at continuity and branding. The secondary piece of it is that you're actually giving the policyholder the experience as they understand it, right? This is who I buy from. And for the carrier, I don't know the carrier financials exactly the way I do at the agency level, but I mean, a $60,000 person, if you were to take 10 to 15 or 20%, which is the number we know is happening, of the phone calls they get for just simple stuff, you take 10 or 20% of those away from those folks, you're talking about millions of dollars at the carrier level. At the agency level, you're talking about generally tens of thousands, if not, somewhere in that 6-figure range, right? And so that element, that white label, just the simple decision to do the right thing, that's all the ripple. That's the ripple effect that
Yeah.
they've made, that leadership made with that type of decision, right? So that's really at the core of what it is. I think, at the end of the day, what's coming down the pipes is literally pipes, right?
Yeah.
We need carriers and agencies and policyholders to be able to get a hold of these documents because we can drive ROI. We can create margin that makes us feel like we did when we signed up to be agents. And not that we were greedy, but did we think we were always going to be chasing that extra 3 to 4% because everything was tighter, competition, commissions, people needing more money, like all of these other things that came into play. If you were to just take 20% of the just, I could do that myself stuff off an agent's table, you feel like an agent again. And like I'm a virtual metaverse golfer, so I'll make a joke about golfing, but like conceptually the joke about everybody, we just wanted to be on the golf course, right? Like I actually don't believe that the best agents don't know how to do anything but just kill it. But the flip side of it is that you got to determine destiny. You got to determine what you did with your time, what you did with your money, when you did it. And I tell you what, man, you don't get to do that when VAs are great, but they're a Band-Aid right now, the way they're being utilized, right? And so we are in a spot where we're going to get those connections. I'm calling every insurance company I can talk to. Hey, if you're listening to this, your insurance company, I want a tour of your 100-year-old building. I am that level of nerd. Like, I want to go and tour these old buildings. Like, I want these connections to be made because it's the only thing we do this. And people can say insurance is dusty and blah, blah, blah. but they're just wrong. As soon as we have connections to carriers, the way that I'm talking about and the stuff we're working on at GloveBox, you can't be in the know and say we're dusty. It's that I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that's simple because it's
No,
a
you're
big,
right.
but we can do it now, right? It's not a can we or will we work. GloveBox is doing it. We know how to do it. Partners like Majesco make it take a couple hours to get it done. I mean, we need to have a serious conversation. I shouldn't say a continuous conversation
Right.
until this is done. This is too obvious, man. It's too obvious, and the right people are on it.
Yeah, you bring up something that, I got excited. I pulled the mic up and then you kept talking. I was like, man, he's still killing me. Like you got so much stuff coming at me, and I'm like, but and I appreciate so much. But one of the things you brought up, and one of the things I talk about on stages, and we've got to wrap up. Shit, I just looked up. But or I may have to make this a 2-part episode. But so like I talk about on stage, hard market, navigating hard market, and how to get through hard market. And one of the things I say a lot is, I said a couple weeks ago on stage of, we're not anywhere close to the end of this hard market. We're just not, and I don't feel like that. And I always say I don't see a world where carriers that have gotten away with, I should say, and I don't say that in a negative way, my carrier friends, because I served the carrier side for a while, of once they've gotten away with charging this much, why would they go back to charging, what we less?
Right.
Same thing with anything, not just carriers, but and I shouldn't say get away with, because there's so many expenses that lead to that. So that's not what I'm saying. But why would they go backwards on their pricing? So I feel like we're here. This is the new norm, in my opinion. But what you're saying right now could solve that problem of like, why would they want to go down a little bit in their pricing? Well, because now they're saving money because of all the things you're talking about. You're taking 20% off their plate.
100%.
Carriers, can, if they know that their agents are doing this, this amount of work instead of this amount of work, and they know it's going, and they know that their underwriters not having to take these phone calls and these phone calls, and their actuarial, all these things are being saved this kind of time, it's going to equal savings. So I think what you guys do in a glove box, I say all of that tirade to say, I think you guys are doing a glove box is meaningful, is, game changing. And that's like such an overused phrase and used the wrong way, but legitimately what glove box is doing is game changing. What some of my sponsors of this show at Canopy Connect is game changing. What some of the people out in this industry, Marsh Berry, talking about Andy, some of the things that people are doing out there is game changing right now. Like you said, we're not dusty. So man, my heart's beating out of my chest right now. I'm like ready to go run through a brick wall right now. So you got me fired up, and I appreciate that. And then I've got to go get on some boring Zoom calls here in a minute. But thank you. So real quickly, I know they just heard from GloveBox a couple weeks ago with Ryan, which is again one of the coolest guys I know. I bought freaking Lululemon pants because of this guy. But tell me,
He told me to bring
else.
that up. You got it in here, Ryan. He got it in there before
I did.
I was building up to that. I love that. He literally is like, well, don't forget the Lulus, man.
Dude, I've got them on right now, Ryan. I'm wearing my Lulu khakis. But that's hilarious.
I mean,
so
the dude just leads the way in every way.
He really does. So is there anything that you could, you want to share? We'll give a quick 45-second plug to GloveBox. And if you want to leave any contact info before we sign out.
Yeah, easy to find me. I'm Pat at GloveBox app, gloveboxapp.com. So that's my email. I'm super frequent on LinkedIn and on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I'm easy to find on that side of things. And I think just at the end of the day, I always tell people that innovation in the insurance space, it comes in two forms, and they both have to go in the same direction, right? There has to be that political element to it, right? And there also needs to be that group that can actually achieve it, right? There needs to be that group that's willing to go out there, that has the infrastructure in place, right? And so, as you listen to this, if you're working, like, understand that you should be reaching out to your carrier partners and talking about this glove box integration that we're doing with Acuity. I mean, it takes 8 to 10 hours of development work if you don't have a group like Majesco already working with you to do it. So like, just the reality of how close we are to this, like, agencies should be reaching out to their carrier reps, telling their carrier reps to come track me down. That's what I do all day, every day is try to help carriers stay ahead of what's going on, so they're not surprised. But yeah, this is the moment. I mean, this is what people have been asking for years. This is the promise that InsurTech has, and I'm excited about AI. If you're excited about AI, understand that the APIs that are being built and the connections that are being made, they're the things that will make all that AI super special until we solve these core problems. And like we've done with Acuity, like Majesco's partnered with us to do a GloveBox, like till we do that stuff, there's just two different paths they're going down. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't be more serious about it. And I mean, of course I say that because that's where I work, but I'm very intentional about where I work.
Yeah.
So the time is now. Everything you ever heard me talking about or complaining about, I'm solving. And thank you to everybody that helped me get here too. I mean, it's absolutely impossible to do what I do to not have support from people like you and all the other people I hopefully mentioned, and certainly all the people I forgot to mention. Thank you. I mean, it's not easy to get here, but once we got people we love and trust there, like, let's do it, man. Let's do the thing.
Let's roll. Yeah, let's go. Dude, thank you so much for being here. I hate to sign out, but we got to. But man, I really appreciate it. It's not often I get my heart beating out of my chest that early in the morning talking about insurance. So I'm excited about it. So thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.